Thank you everybody for sitting so promptly and welcome to our first Parliamentary Friends of Dementia event for this financial year. It is wonderful to see all of you. I'm Kayle Stokes. I'm the Executive Director for Services, Advocacy and Research at Dementia Australia, and it's my privilege to be emceeing today. I do want to offer the apologies of our Dementia Australia Chair, Merryn Kelsall AC, who was due to be chairing today but is unfortunately unwell. I know that Merryn is watching the live stream, so hello Merryn, and I hope that I can stand in your shoes for today to do the emceeing. So thank you everyone for being here. It's great to see such a full room of people, and no doubt there'll be many of us, our friends and colleagues joining online as well and watching the live stream. So it's great to see you all. I would like to begin today by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we're all meeting, both here in the room in Parliament House in Canberra on Ngunnawal and Ngambie lands, and also to any Indigenous peoples that are here in the room today or joining us online. It's wonderful to have all of you here. So we've invited everybody here today because we've got a pretty clear message that I think all of you will be very comfortable repeating by the end of the proceedings, which is that when it comes to dementia, nobody can do it alone. And that's what you're going to hear from many of our speakers today, talking about their own personal experiences, talking about what it is that we need from the 48th Parliament to ensure that people living with dementia and their families and carers have the services and supports that they need. We're also going to be talking about a range of different types of dementia, everything from childhood dementia through to younger onset dementia and dementias that impact older people, because we know that dementia is a condition that touches so many different parts of our community. I'd like to acknowledge any ministers, MPs, shadow ministers and parliamentary colleagues that are in the room today. And I'd also like to warmly welcome our two co-chairs for our Parliamentary Friends of Dementia event. Senator Helen Polley is here and will speak to us in a moment. Senator Polley has been a co-chair for our Parliamentary Friends of Dementia event for, I think, more than a decade, is it, Helen? And has been an incredible advocate both inside and outside of this place in ensuring that the living experiences of people that are impacted by dementia is front and centre in our Parliament. So we really appreciate that. We're also very pleased to welcome Senator Wendy Askew, who will be coming a little bit later. Senator Askew is a senator for Tasmania, and she's our new co-chair for Parliamentary Friends of Dementia, and I know that she'll also be a terrific advocate for people that are impacted by dementia in this place. So we will warmly welcome her when she's able to arrive. We're proud to say that since 2003, we have been ensuring that our parliaments have a very strong focus on dementia, and that's incredibly important because of the more than 430,000 people living with dementia in Australia at the current time. And it is an important part of the advocacy that Dementia Australia undertakes to ensure that parliamentarians, many of whom have their own experiences of dementia, are able to advocate on behalf of their constituents who are impacted by dementia, but also understand some of the different services and supports that can really make a difference to those that are impacted. So I would like to acknowledge all of our esteemed colleagues here today, members and senators who've taken the time to join us. We also know that there's a number of new MPs, so it's wonderful to be able to talk to you all about the impact of dementia on Australians at the current time, and make sure that everybody is across some of the key areas of advocacy that Dementia Australia is undertaking. I'd like to also acknowledge our dementia advocates in the room today. I know there's quite a number of you. I'll introduce some of our advocate speakers in a moment, but I also would like to acknowledge Dennis Frost, who is the Deputy Chair of our Dementia Australia Advisory Committee. So welcome to you all. I will be introducing our speakers shortly, but I would like to acknowledge Fouad Arbo and his wife Samia, who are here to speak to us today, Gina Callan, Sue Watts, and the Dementia Childhood Initiative CEO and also mum of 2 kids living with childhood dementia, Megan Mack, who will be speaking shortly. I welcome our health and aged care colleagues to proceedings, and we've got representatives here from the Department of Health, Ageing, Disability, and also sports and concussion colleagues as well. So we have a great cross-section of people, which I think really demonstrates the multiple impacts that dementia has right across our society. I'd like to acknowledge our Dementia Australia CEO, Tanya Buchanan, who will be speaking shortly, and all of our Dementia Australia colleagues who have been so instrumental in pulling this event together. It always runs seamlessly on the day, but it's an incredibly challenging, multifaceted piece of work to get it to this point. So thank you to all of our staff for making it happen. I'd also like to welcome all of our online viewers, because it's incredibly powerful to be able to have a room full of people, but also know that there's an audience out there online that are also able to watch proceedings as well. I will just note that the event is being recorded. So photography will also be taking place. So if any of you don't want your photo used for whatever reason, please do let one of the Dementia Australia staff know, and we can make sure that you are out of camera shot. Now, normally Parliament House is a bit of a funny beast in that there's bells ringing for many of our proceedings, and we don't expect that there will be bells today because we don't have Parliament sitting until midday. So we should be in the clear, but if the bells do ring, we will either proceed through the bells or we'll pause for a moment depending on how we go. But we will see how things go. So without further ado, I am going to introduce the Honourable Sam Ray MP, who is our Minister for Aged Care and Seniors, to say a few words. Okay, no, we're not going to introduce the Honourable Sam Ray at the moment. What we will do is introduce our fabulous co-chair of the Parliamentary Friends of Dementia, Senator Helen Polley, to come and say a few words. Please welcome Helen.
I'd love to be promoted to the Aged Care Ministry, I can assure you. I'm not sure the government would appreciate it, though. Thank you very much for the very warm welcome this morning, and welcome to you all. I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we meet and pay my respect to those past, present and emerging. Thank you to Dementia Australia, because I don't think people realise how much effort it takes to actually organise an event like this and to get advocates together, researchers, doctors and those people that are impacted. So thank you for what you do each and every day, working with me, but more importantly, working with those people that are on the dementia journey with their families and their carers. I'd also like to acknowledge and pass my best wishes on for a speedy recovery to the Chair of Dementia Australia, Miriam Kessel AO, and CEO, Professor Tanya Buchanan. Lovely to have you here with Christine and David and Kaylee, all of you that work for Dementia Australia. Appreciate what you do each and every day. I'd also like to acknowledge Wendy Askew, Senator Askew. It's no coincidence that we're both from Tasmania. I think that says something about chronic illness, and unfortunately where Tasmania is actually recognised and acknowledged for having some of the worst chronic illnesses in the country, not something that we're proud of. But being able to work with Wendy is a privilege for me, because she's as committed as what I am to this issue. Now, I think the theme and leading into the Action Week for Dementia, and I think the event today is very fitting. Dementia, nobody can do it alone, and anyone who has had a loved one or is on the journey themselves will know you can't do it alone. This isn't just advice for anyone with dementia, but it's great advice actually to take it for your entire life's journey. It's significant time for advocates in the dementia space. It's World Alzheimer's Month, and in the lead up to Dementia Action Week from the 15th to the 21st of September, the Parliamentary Friends of Dementia and Dementia Australia are delighted to set the agenda for the 48th Parliament to commit to our cause, which is to make life better for those living with dementia, their families and their carers. As we've heard many times, and I had to go on ABC radio, I had to ring in probably about 6 weeks ago when they were talking about dementia, and the radio host didn't actually believe when she was telling people it's the leading cause of death in women and the second leading cause of death in Australia. And she was saying, oh, I better check that out. Maybe the figures are wrong. So I stopped the car. I did stop the car, and I had to ring in and just explain to her that that is, in fact, right. The alarming thing is it will become the leading cause of death in this country. So it is a significant economic issue that is facing people with younger onset dementia, having a real impact on our economies, on people's lives. And then we're going to hear later about childhood dementia, which is heartbreaking. People living with dementia, their families and carers are depending on us. That's us as a government and as an opposition to make sure we get the policy settings right so we can meet the challenges of this disease. We all have a stake in our own health. To stop dementia in its tracks, to hear from advocates and experts about how we can try and prevent dementia is so important. Diagnosis and workforce are two very important issues in this space, and I've been advocating, I hate to admit this, is probably 15 years I've been involved with this organisation, but raising awareness, and we have made a lot of ground over those 15 years. But a good thing for me as a government member is we've had 34 new members of Parliament on our side alone. So our job is really about starting again, because it's amazing how many people who haven't been impacted know very little about the disease and think, oh, it's just something that happens to old people. Well, it doesn't. My brother-in-law was 38. It took him 7 years to diagnose him, and he died at 50 from dementia. So certainly not a disease only impacting older Australians. Now, we know that there's over 456,000 Australians on this journey. What we need to do is, for early onset dementia, another ambition of mine is to keep those people in the workforce for as long as possible. Because what happens is, if you have to give up your job, your carer will have to give up their job as well to look after you. That has an enormous impact on the nation's economy, but more importantly, it has a real impact on that family and their community. Look, I am delighted to be part of a government that recognises that there is still more to do, and I have great ambitions for Minister Butler and our very new Minister Sam Ray to educate him in particular as a new minister about this journey that people don't choose to go on. It's not like you're going on a holiday. It's a journey that impacts your entire family, not just yourself, your carers, but your community. And we still have a fair bit of work to do, I'd have to say, around creating dementia-friendly communities. Maybe when you live in the country like my brother-in-law did, Westbury in northern Tasmania was a dementia-friendly community, and no one had even used that terminology before, because he'd lived there his entire life. So when he got lost, people would point him in the right direction home. Somebody who used to stack wood for elderly people in the community still did that when he developed dementia. So if somebody come home and they found this man, who most of them knew as Albert, stacking their wood in their woodshed, there was no issue. But they cared for him and they looked out for him. If you live in a big city, you all know you can be lonely in a city of 4 million people. If you have dementia, then the issues you face every day are far worse. So with that, just while Wendy's in the room, just wonderful to have you join the team, Wendy. I did say, you know, Tasmanians, we all stick together up here. I see Andrew Wilkie down the back. Maybe not all the time, Andrew, but we're here serving the people, and I just want to say thank you. It's so wonderful to see so many people here, and to the advocates who are going to speak today. I may be a politician and I get to talk a lot in this place. You find that hard to believe, but what you say is far, far more powerful than anything I could say.
Thank you so much, Helen. I think that Helen's speech has demonstrated the way in which she's been such an incredible advocate for people that are impacted by dementia here in this place and outside of it. It's now my pleasure to introduce Senator Wendy Askew, who is our new co-chair of our Parliamentary Friends of Dementia. So please welcome Wendy.
What a great turnout. I hadn't actually looked around the corner, so thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation today, and especially thank you to Helen Polly. I've just taken on this role after two major stalwarts within this building. The previous co-chair from the coalition was Nola Marino, and she was so passionate about this cause. So when she rang me and said, "Will you please take it on?" Of course, I couldn't say no. But I have a lot to learn in regard to dementia. It's actually something that, fortunately, I suppose, it hasn't touched my family. However, I have friends who have certainly had family members impacted, so it is something that I'm very keen to see advanced and the causes advanced within this parliament. So I'm very happy to have taken on the role, and thank you very much. It was also great to have an initial briefing a few weeks ago with Tanya and Carla just about the dementia in Australia and to fully understand the work that they are doing, and also looking forward to what they're out to achieve. I think in this term of Parliament they've got some great ambitions, including the National Pathways for Adults, particularly in regard to initial diagnosis, because as you can imagine, I think it would be one of the, many of you in the room may have been through it, and I look forward to hearing from our advocates. That shock when you are initially diagnosed would just be amazing, horrendous. Also in regard to education to all Australians, especially in regard to brain health, I think that is really important that we have that understanding of what we can do earlier in life to try and prevent the onset of any dementia, as well as upskilling, obviously, the workforce, and the care workforce is one of the most vital parts of this picture as far as I'm concerned. It is really important that we make sure that the people looking after anybody diagnosed with dementia, to make sure that going forward that they are provided with the correct supports within their communities and within their health networks. As I said, this is my first meeting as a Parliamentary Friends co-chair, so I am really excited today to sit and listen to as much of this morning's session as I can. I will apologise that I have another meeting to go to, so we'll have to leave at about 11:10. But in the meantime, looking forward to hearing from the advocates and getting a greater understanding of the impacts, but also what the needs are, so that together with Helen and the government that we can work together over this time on a non-political basis as best we can, as with Andrew, just to make sure that we are providing what is needed for anybody who is suffering or experienced that diagnosis of dementia. So as the first one, I just want to say thank you. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much to the advocates for coming along and being prepared to share your stories. And thank you for what you do, because without advocacy, we don't know. So that's the main thing. We really do need to know what is required. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. Thank you for coming, and I look forward to further events. Thank you.
Thanks, Wendy. And I think it's wonderful that we've got two such committed co-chairs to continue the conversation around dementia in Australia and the impact that it has on all of us. Unfortunately, Minister Ray is still running a little bit behind, and we're not able to have Senator Anne Ruston join us either, because as some of you may know, there's quite a bit of conversation going on around aged care reforms at the moment. So if there's an excuse for people to not be attending the event on time or being able to be here, I think probably doing aged care reform business is a pretty good one. So we'll accept that as a reason to not have everybody here in the room today. Given that Minister Ray hasn't quite turned up yet, I am going to introduce our CEO, Professor Tanya Buchanan, to say a few words about why this event is so important in starting the conversation around Dementia Australia's priorities. Please welcome Tanya.
Thanks, Kale, and thank you everyone for attending today, and thank you to our co-chairs, Senators Polly and Askew. I wasn't very nervous, and then I stood up here and I see all of you out there, and there's so many of you. Look, thank you for being here. I do feel like some of my key messages have been really strongly already messaged by both of our Senator co-chairs, which gives me hope, actually, that we are in good hands with people advocating in this House for greater support for people living with dementia now and into the future. Because we know that dementia is the leading issue affecting this country in terms of public health, in terms of aged care, in terms of disability, and in fact, it's increasingly becoming a major challenge for our acute health sector as well. And perhaps because Australians have for too long mistakenly understood dementia as a normal part of ageing, and let's be really clear, it isn't, dementia has been largely discussed in terms of aged care, and it's missing from a lot of our conversations around chronic illness, around acute care, around primary care, around disease prevention. And it is vital that we start to change that discussion. So Dementia Australia is here today to lay out our vision for the future, and we're leading the call to start a national conversation about brain health, to raise community awareness of dementia, and to provide more targeted and effective support for people of all ages impacted by all forms of dementia. As you've already heard, there are more than 433,000 Australians currently living with dementia. That includes around 29,000 Australians who are living with younger onset dementia, and around 1,500 children who are living with conditions that are causing them to also have dementia. And we will hear from people right across, as Kale said, right across all of those age groups and with varying forms of dementia later today. I want to thank our advocates for speaking today. Your voices are powerful, and we're delighted that you are here. Last financial year, Dementia Australia supported more than 50,000 people through our National Dementia Helpline and our services. But as I've just said, the number of people who are impacted by dementia is much bigger than that, and more support is needed. We also know that in the coming decades, the number of people who are living with dementia is expected to double. It's already our leading cause of death for Australian women, and not far off being the leading cause of death for all Australians. A 2024 Lancet Commission report demonstrated that we can in fact start to think about addressing modifiable risk factors for dementia, and that if we can be really effective in addressing modifiable risk factors, up to 45% of dementia cases could be significantly delayed or prevented into the future. But nowhere in our national discussion are we talking about brain health and chronic disease prevention when we're talking about dementia. We know dementia is having a very widespread and profound impact on individuals, families and communities. And I do want to just give a shout out to our staff who are on the National Dementia Helpline, because they hear from you every day about those impacts, and they do an incredible job of supporting Australians. People who live with dementia experience stigma, discrimination, they struggle to access services, they really struggle to navigate our complex disability and aged care systems. And our research shows that there has been a profound and frankly disturbing lack of awareness and understanding about dementia in the Australian community. 2 in 3 Australians tell us they know very little about dementia, but the vast majority tell us they would really love to know how they could lower their risk. Dementia is one of the most feared health conditions, And as I said, it will soon be the leading cause of death for all Australians. But most Australians tell us they don't want to think about it or talk about it. So that is why we are continuing to advocate to the federal government and to our state and territory governments for support to raise Australians' understanding, and in this House for the federal government to commit to a national conversation on dementia, to raise awareness about the condition and to promote brain health at all ages. We're calling for funding to establish a team of dementia specialist navigators within Dementia Australia to support people's access to services and specialist knowledge and skills, and to build the capability and capacity of the workforce to provide care and support for people living with dementia. That workforce is in aged care, it's in our disability sectors, it's in our acute health sectors, it's in primary health, it's in our first responders, because people who live with dementia access all of those services, and 2 in 3 people who live with dementia are living in our communities. We're also supporting the Childhood Dementia Initiative call for support for children, and Megan will speak to that shortly. We look forward to seeing these initiatives supported in the National Dementia Action Plan because they are essential to ensuring better outcomes for people of all ages who are impacted by all forms of dementia. And by taking a comprehensive approach to addressing dementia, we can reduce the impact of dementia into the future. We cannot afford to wait, and we're calling on the Australian Government to take decisive action. People living with dementia, their families and carers are depending on us to do this and to get it right. We know nobody can do it alone, and we look forward to continuing our work together to improve the outcomes for people who are living with dementia, their families and carers, and to preventing dementia into the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tanya. Now, the Minister has arrived in perfect timing, so I would like to introduce the Honourable Sam Ray MP, our Minister for Aged Care and Seniors, to say a few words. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to speak with you today. Can I begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we're gathered, the Ngunnawal and Ngambri peoples, and pay my respects to elders past and present, and extend those respects to any First Nations people here today. Dementia is obviously a very serious issue that affects more than 433,000 people in Australia today, with that number expected to double by 2058 as our population continues to age. That means more people living with dementia who need support, more pressure on the health and aged care systems, and of course, more impact on families, on carers, and on communities. We must continue striving to improve outcomes for people living with dementia, and this means dementia needs to be front of mind when we are designing policies and programs that affect people living with dementia and their families. It also underscores why groups like the Parliamentary Friends of Dementia and the dementia advocacy bodies that play such an important role here are critical in that conversation. They keep the conversation going in the community and here in the Parliament. Improving dementia supports was one of the driving forces behind the National Dementia Action Plan that the Australian Government launched last year. The plan aims to improve the lives and care of people living with dementia, their carers and families over the next decade. The plan was developed by the Commonwealth and state and territory governments and was shaped by extensive consultation with people living with dementia and their advocates. The action plan includes 8 actions aimed at increasing dementia awareness, reducing the population's risk of dementia, and driving better coordinated services for people living with dementia, their families and their carers. The 8 actions seek to promote equity and human rights, tackle stigma, improve awareness and promote inclusivity, empower individuals and communities to minimise risk where they can and delay onset and progression, improve dementia diagnosis and post-diagnostic care and support, improve treatment, coordination and support for people living with dementia, support carers of people living with dementia, build capability of the workforce to care for and support people living with dementia, and improve dementia data, maximise the impact of dementia research, and promote innovation across the sector. The Labor government has increased funding for dementia supports following recommendations by the Royal Commission into Aged Care Quality and Safety that focused particularly on early intervention assistance, respite care, support for carers, and the quality of dementia care. The 2025-26 budget included $5.7 million in 25-26 for the National Centre for Monitoring Dementia to continue to provide dementia data and monitor progress with the National Dementia Action Plan. We've also committed more than $750 million over 4 years to 27-28 to support programs such as the National Dementia Support Program, the rollout of specialist dementia care program units, and the dementia training program to upskill health and aged care workers. It's been a great pleasure for me personally and a privilege in the first few months as the Minister for Aged Care and Seniors to visit many aged care homes around the country and to witness firsthand what best practice dementia care looks like, including the extraordinary passion and dedication of the many workers supporting the wonderful people that we have living with dementia. This Labor government will always fund the programs and services vital to supporting people living with dementia, as well as their carers and their families. We're doing this because, like everyone in this room, we want to improve the lives of people living with dementia and help to shepherd better outcomes for them and their families along the way. It's the right thing to do. We're absolutely committed to doing it, and I very much look forward to continuing to work with everyone across the sector to ensure that we get better outcomes for people living with dementia and the people that love them as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister. As the Minister has mentioned, there's a lot of work that's already been undertaken to improve the quality of care and support for people living with dementia and their families and carers. But we know that there's a lot more to be done, and we're going to hear from some amazing advocates who can talk about what is going to be meaningful change for them and what that looks like, and reinforce why not being able to do it alone is so significant and is such an important part of our call. They've travelled from all over the country to be here and share their experiences, and we'll also have the voices of many other advocates appearing after them. So you'll hear from a whole range of people that are living with dementia, families, carers, all around the country who are experiencing dementia in their own way, but are also very consistent and strong and have the same message, which is that nobody can do it alone, and it's really important that we all get behind people that are impacted by dementia. So I'm going to introduce everybody all in one go, and then they're going to come up one by one to talk about their particular priority area. So our first advocate will be Gina Callan, who has been recently diagnosed with younger onset dementia and ADHD. She's had a long and distinguished career as a registered nurse, a public servant, and she recently has transitioned from being a civil marriage celebrant and fitness coach to focus more on her health and family. So it's wonderful that she's able to come and speak to us today and continue to advocate on behalf of herself and other people that are impacted by dementia. Dr. Fouad Arbo is here also, and will speak after Gina, along with his wife, Samia, Fouad has had a career spanning more than 30 years as a senior executive in the environmental field, and he's also the primary carer for Samia, who is living with dementia. He supports her daily in their family home, and his experience as a carer gives him very deep insights into the needs of carers and the importance of supports that are practical, compassionate, and empowering. So we'll hear from Fouad shortly. Megan Mack is the CEO and founder of the Childhood Dementia Initiative, which is leading world-first action and awareness for all children living with dementia. She's pioneered the consideration of over 100 neglected childhood dementias conditions to improve research, healthcare and policy responses, and she'll be talking about her own experience and also that of her experience as a mum. We'll also be hearing from Sue Watts, who's had an extensive career in academia in the public service. We have a lot of doctors in the room today. And her husband lived with dementia and Parkinson's disease until he passed away in residential aged care in 2024. So Sue is a proud dementia advocate for Dementia Australia, and she participates in a broad range of advocacy nationally and in her home state of Tasmania. So we've got quite a few Tasmanians in the room today to speak to us. So I'm going to introduce Gina, who will come up and start the proceedings of our advocates. Please welcome Gina.
What a great looking room. Well, good morning everyone. My name is Gina and I'm what I, and perhaps a few other people too, call a yoddy. Someone under the age of 65 who has been diagnosed with younger onset dementia. Now last year at the age of 58 I joined the almost 29,000 other yoddies across Australia. We are often invisible and yet we are here living as well as we can. We can't change the fact that our population is growing and ageing, or that there is still no cure for dementia, but we can change the future by educating all Australians about brain health early and long before symptoms appear. That's why I'm here with you today. After all, nobody can do this alone. Now, in another life, I would be at work today and spending my weekends planning retirement trips with my husband, Mick, or making memories with our children and grandchildren. Instead, I'm here talking to all of you. And lately, I've begun recording storybooks on video for my grandkids, all aged under 10, and so that I can, apologies, ladies and gentlemen, so that if or when I lose my memory, my speech, or life too soon, they will still remember me and they will understand why dementia changed all our plans. Now, friends, I'm a sensible person, but the fear and grief associated with dementia are real, and that's why this conversation is so important and matters so much. We now know that around 45% of contributing factors are modifiable through steps including good nutrition, exercise, sleep, hearing and vision care, staying socially connected and keeping our minds active. All Australians deserve to know this. How different might our future as a nation look if brain health was taught as naturally in schools as road safety or healthy eating? What if Australians saw brain health as a lifelong journey that begins in childhood? What if people diagnosed could remain active and in their families, workplaces and communities for longer, preserving dignity, productivity and reducing costs? Now, I've been a nurse, a social scientist, a public servant in residential aged care policy, and a coach and facilitator. My life has been about caring for others and for people in the community and educating communities. So I've seen the power of public awareness, but I've also seen and felt the pain of stigma. Since my diagnosis, I've had people speak differently to me, make assumptions and quietly close doors. Dementia takes more than memory, it takes careers, independence and dignity. And that's why we need a comprehensive government-funded brain health strategy that educates all Australians from childhood through every stage of adulthood across metro, rural and remote, as well as culturally diverse communities. tackles stigma, supports earlier diagnosis, and reduces misdiagnosis. And of course, a strategy that invests in ongoing research for future generations. Australia has shown with heart health, with the Slip, Slop, Slap campaign, HIV and anti-smoking campaigns, what is possible. And now it's time to bring that same urgency to brain health. To all parliamentarians in this room, you have the power to make change happen. And with your influence and leadership, Australia could lead the world in tackling one of the greatest health challenges of our time. Nobody can do this alone, but together we can turn awareness into action, protect futures, and give yoddies like me and all Australians living with dementia the chance to live with dignity, connection and hope. And it's not just me saying so. Here's a video of others from around Australia echoing the urgency of this call. Thank you.
I find it quite alarming that dementia is about to become the #1 national public health issue.
Brain health is so important because I have seen what happens to an unhealthy brain.
You don't realise how much you need and how much you rely on your brain until you don't have it, or it starts to decline.
The evidence base shows that about 40% of dementia can be prevented, or the onset of cognitive decline can be delayed if high-risk individuals are detected early and treated.
We're constantly bombarded with all the information about strengthening our bones, strengthening our muscles, but where's all the education and guidance around strengthening our brains?
And you can do that by making sure that you eat well, you don't smoke, you have a moderate amount of alcohol.
Everyone needs to know what the risk factors are, and those that they can modify and those that they can't modify.
It's essential that we look after brain health for all of us, for families, for workplaces, and for the legacy that we will leave.
This Parliament must be the one to commit to taking positive action on dementia.
We're depending on you. Australians are depending on you.
I'm depending on you.
Thank you, Gina. What a powerful speech, and good morning to you all. My name is Fuad. We face difficult moments in our lives, time when you feel lost and not sure what is next. Our family had one of those moments recently when the love of my life, the mother of our 3 beautiful and very successful daughters, and full of fun wife, who is, by the way, much more smarter than me, was diagnosed with this hideous disease, dementia. It was a shock of my life. I couldn't understand how someone so smart and who is a pioneer of her generation was now facing such a cruel prognosis. Processing the news has been difficult. There is shock, then the minefield of trying to absorb all the information and adaptation, learning about what the future holds. In addition to all of the above, we also have to navigate the mayhem of the care and support system, which, if I'm being honest, hasn't been straightforward. It truly requires significant improvement, particularly in terms of its efficiency. And I would like to acknowledge and note here and welcome the Health Minister, Mark Butler, acknowledging as much and indicating the commitment to improve process with the National Dementia Action Plan. The overwhelming and confusing system has economic and efficiency failure, which are costing the nation, in my views, unnecessarily, especially in the context of our aging population, as it has been said already. It's also costing family valuable time that could be better spent with their loved one. I have had a career in academia and business at executive and board level. Finding efficiency, improving processes and systems, and troubleshooting is a second nature to me. I was truly astounded at the complication and inconsistency when accessing the information and service to support Samia and my family experience of dementia. There is no clear path to follow. Doctors, specialists, appointment, paperwork, and people you have to deal with. It's endless. There needs to be a system of navigation, so when you receive a diagnosis, there is a role or a person to go to who can not only link to your support and to disease information, but also explain the system processes. Now, with my professional hat on, it goes without saying that more investment and efficiency is crucial because it allows individual, organization, and government to achieve more, and I dare saying with less. This leading to increased productivity, sustainability, and reduced cost, saving time, reducing frustration, and stress for us, the carers. And also would like to highlight the importance of destigmatizing dementia for all society, and in particular, a need for in-language program to better assist some migrant communities who have deep-rooted stigma surrounding conditions like dementia, and the list goes on. It is really a no-brainer, and as a stakeholder, we all here to make the call for improved and vital navigation link and support to be more available for everyone, as the moment who have to wade through all this inefficiency and mess alone, and we shouldn't have to do it alone. The economic and social benefit are all common sense. So let's go, Australia. As an advocate, I would like to thank Dementia Australia, who is now like a second family to us. And they're doing a tremendous job. They are perfectly positioned to deliver the navigation service if funding is provided. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I would greatly appreciate your help in processing these important changes for the sake of our loved ones, to improve treatment and to leave a legacy that we will all be proud of. Thank you.
When the National Dementia Action Plan was released at the end of last year, it included children with dementia as a priority population, and it acknowledged that they face significant challenges in accessing dementia care and support services. And I congratulate the Australian Government in taking this first significant step, recognising in national policy that dementia is a lifespan disease that also impacts children. A baby is born every 3 days with a genetic condition that will cause dementia in childhood. 50% will die by their 10th birthday, most won't live to adulthood. All of the challenges that you hear about today also impact children with dementia throughout their short lives. However, the difference in age does bring some inherent and unique challenges. The first is that children with dementia often begin to lose their skills before they've fully developed them. This includes talking, walking, reading, and playing. And they have so little to lose. So the need for specialist help is critical. But unfortunately, the paediatric health system is not set up for dementia. And the few supports that do exist are hard for families to find and to piece together. There are no clear standards, no recognised models of care, and no agreed pathways for families to follow. Health professionals often have very little knowledge of childhood dementia, and parents are left searching all alone for information and guidance that simply doesn't exist. The needs of children with dementia and their families span health, disability, education, and community services. And without dedicated navigation support, parents are left to manage multi-system care arrangements all alone. And this results in a grossly inequitable situation where the care and the support that a child receives is dependent on their parents' ability to advocate for them. Another unique challenge is that childhood dementia occurs in families in their prime. When parents receive this heartbreaking diagnosis, they're in the midst of raising children, juggling careers, establishing lives, and the impact of childhood dementia on the family unit is catastrophic. They experience extreme levels of anxiety and financial stress. Almost all parents are forced to change their work status, and 1 in 3 give up their careers entirely to care full-time for their child. Their physical health suffers, and unsurprisingly, marital breakdowns are reported very frequently due to these strains. And to add to this tragedy, childhood dementia is genetic, and it occurs in young, often growing families. So it's not unusual to have more than one child. When this happens, the psychosocial impacts that I've just described are multiplied exponentially. And mine is one such family because, as well as the CEO of the Childhood Dementia Initiative, I'm also mum to 2 teenagers who I'm slowly losing to dementia. And all that I've described, I'm living firsthand. People of all ages living with dementia must have nationally consistent specialist dementia care and navigation support. Now we're going to hear from some of the community, which does include some parents of children with dementia. Thank you.
Receiving a diagnosis of dementia is one of the most confronting, sad, and challenging of all health experiences.
A diagnosis of dementia is a life-changing event in anyone's life. A defining and lonely moment for many people who find they are faced with this reality with very little personal support to help them and guide them through this.
When you get a diagnosis, there needs to be, or you need a clear pathway to support or information. It's just a maze, and it's when you've got a mind that doesn't work, one word normally, it's just all too confusing.
You literally don't know where to start when your loved one is diagnosed with dementia. Having that one point of contact or anchor point, constant, would have made all the difference.
In regional New South Wales, the only face-to-face help that is available after a diagnosis of dementia is through overworked New South Wales healthcare workers, volunteers or charities.
It's essential that people do get support right from the start of the diagnosis, right from the beginning of the journey.
To know that there's communication between colleagues, between researchers, to have somewhere to go to ask questions from the real experts would just be amazing. I can't even describe how life-changing that would be.
Unless there are clear footsteps that we are able to follow, it is not possible to navigate the complex experiences that are ahead through this disease alone.
Dementia can be a lonely, scary path to travel. Please help us with extra support on diagnosis.
We are depending on you.
Australians are depending on you.
I'm depending on you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sue Watts. Why am I speaking today? Because my husband Jean had dementia and lived in residential aged care for 3 years. He died in residential aged care last year, in 2024. I'm here to talk to you about how that affected my husband, our family, and to ask parliamentarians to take action on mandatory, nationally approved dementia training. I have come here from Tasmania, Lutruwita, to speak to this urgent issue. I'm doing it in the memory of my husband Jean. He was a strong advocate for people with disabilities during his working life, and his work was informed by this phrase, fiat justitia ruat caelum, let justice prevail, though the heavens fall. People with dementia and their families deserve justice in the form of mandatory professional dementia training. Where is the justice now in the residential aged care system for people with dementia, their loved ones, their families, their grandchildren, their parents, the grandparents, and where is the justice for Jean? He was in a care system with no requirement for staff to have formalised dementia training. I saw firsthand how critical it is for staff across the health and aged care system to have the knowledge, skills and formal mandated training to be able to care for someone living with dementia. While many of the staff Jean encountered were kind and well-meaning, most appeared to have little, if any, understanding about dementia and dementia care. This meant that too often his behaviours were misunderstood and his needs were not met in a way that truly supported his dignity or well-being. Now, this is not the work of the workforce. The education requirements in regulatory systems across aged care simply aren't good enough. And because of that, the people in their care can suffer. At times, the consequences of inadequate training were deeply confronting. I witnessed distressing incidents over 3 years, including a person with dementia defecating in a hallway. The staff didn't know how to respond, and the person with the dementia's needs and behaviours were not recognised. Now, these weren't one-off events. They happened often. This could be your mum, your grandfather, or even you one day. The Royal Commission into Aged Care, recommendation number 78, called for mandatory minimum qualifications for personal care workers. This recommendation has not been delivered, even in the new Aged Care Act, and we wonder why. What will it take? If someone is diagnosed with other terminal illnesses, they would expect and are offered support from staff with specialised knowledge in that area, from doctors, nurses, carers, and others involved with supporting someone with dementia. It's a tough and isolated journey when dementia touches your life. We were shocked to discover there's no formalised professional training required to look after such a complicated and devastating condition. Frankly, it's shocking. I gave lived experience testimony in October 2024 to the Senate hearing into the new Aged Care Act and to shine a light on the absolute need for formalised training in dementia. And I'm here again, calling for bold action to be taken and bipartisan support by all politicians in this House to support mandatory dementia education in aged care. I encourage the Minister for Aged Care and Seniors to use his powers on the rules to include mandatory dementia training. There is still time. I speak directly to our politicians elected into the 48th Parliament of Australia. I say to you, if a diagnosis of dementia touches your life, your family, now or in the future, know that you have the capacity and power in your role right now to make this change happen. Support mandatory dementia training, please. Have no regrets. You have the power to make such a difference in people's lives. I implore you to take actions on this urgent step to deliver this recommendation of the Royal Commission in Aged Care and to reinforce why mandatory dementia training is essential. Please join me in hearing from others who share this call for change. Thank you, everybody.
From the moment I started on my journey, I quickly came face to face with stigma, discrimination, ignorance and prejudice by people from all walks of life, including the medical profession. The only way past this is through training. We need everyone to understand.
I don't really know of any other disease or condition where you're dealing with staff who aren't trained specifically in that area. When I have to interact with services and people who have no training or understanding of dementia, it is often confrontational, and it almost always means that their services are more detrimental than assistive.
You should be able to go in to Centrelink and sit down with somebody that understands dementia. I think every organisation should have to do some form of dementia training.
The difference is slight is for those who are not skilled, the interaction is traumatic, it's confronting, and it's extremely challenging for both the person diagnosed and for the carer.
Training needs to be mandatory for all staff working with people living with dementia.
I know that if I end up in an aged care facility, I want to be looked after by staff who know about and understand my dementia and know my specific individual needs.
When care workers are well trained and experienced in dementia, it means that they understand me.
We're counting on you now to get it right for those who are left living with this, their families and their carers, and those who are going to come afterwards, who are going to need your support in getting this right now.
I'm living with dementia and I'm depending on you to get it right. Now, we're depending on you.
Australians are depending on you.
I am depending on you.
I think everybody probably needs to just take a moment. Can you please all join with me in thanking again our speakers, both here in the room and on our video, for their incredibly powerful messages. To stand and talk about your personal experiences and to think about a future that none of us want to think about is incredibly important and powerful, and it's a really strong message, I think, for everybody here and on our live stream audience to think about and to act on. That concludes our formal proceedings here at Parliament House today. I do want to thank again everybody who made this event possible and who have taken the time to attend and listen and absorb the messages that we've been talking about today. Please do take a copy of our infographic if you haven't already. We have a summary of some of our calls to action around the importance of brain health, around helping people to navigate the service systems in which they need to access, and also making sure that our workforce have the capability to support people that are impacted by dementia. We'll be continuing to share this information and the recording of our live stream event in the coming weeks. And of course, as Helen mentioned earlier, it's also Dementia Action Week from the 15th to the 21st of September. And I'm pretty sure all of you can guess what our message for Dementia Action Week is. It's you can't do it alone. So we do ask that people, as part of Dementia Action Week, think about reaching out to somebody that they know that might be impacted by dementia, because we do know, and we've heard today from so many people, that we can't do it alone. And it's really important that we have that engagement and wraparound support to lessen the sense of isolation. You can also find out more on our website at dementia.org.au. And of course, as Tanya mentioned earlier, please do contact the National Dementia Helpline on 1800 100 500 if you have any questions, concerns, you need to talk to somebody. It doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter where you are, it doesn't matter whether your problem is big or small, it is able to be addressed, and you can reach out to the National Dementia Helpline. Our staff are there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to help break down some of the misunderstandings, some of the confusion and the complexity that dementia can bring. Thank you again to everybody that's been here today. For those of you on our live stream, thank you for joining us online. For those of us in the room, please do stay on for photos and for morning tea. Thank you so much.